Okay, good morning, everyone. Welcome to our Board of County Commissioners admin meeting on today, July 15th. If you are on the line and want to comment at some point, do as we always do at these meetings that are virtual and now hybrid. Please raise your hand in Teams, or if you're on the phone, simply hit *6 and unmute yourself and chime in at the appropriate time when we ask for comment. So to begin with, Violet, would you like to do roll call?
Yes. Over Teams, we have Martin Kidston, Sarah Bell, Geneva Zoltek, Ginny Merriam, Anna Conley, and Dave Wall. And here in person, we have myself, Violet Plummer, Kyla Lennertz, Heather Powers, Adrienne Beck, Mel Fisher, Aaron Wilson, Allison Franz, Chris Lounsbury, David Everingham, Commissioners Slotnick, Strohmeyer, and Barrow. Did I miss anybody? Okay, over to you, Dave.
Okay, and one thing I noticed, Violet, on the electronic version of the agenda today, never mind, I was looking at the wrong thing. We're good. Okay, moving right along, that slight bit of drama. Our action, well, before we get to action items, any other public comment or any public comment on items not on today's agenda? Okay. No potholes, anything else to address. Okay, moving right on to action items. And we do have a hard stop at 11 a.m. So we're going to cram all of this in, and we will begin with a staff report from Aaron Wilson. Aaron, come on up to the table, hit the button to turn the light green, and share with us what you have.
Thanks, Aaron Wilson, a city's infrastructure mobility planning manager, also overseeing the Metropolitan Planning Organization. It's good to be here in an in-person meeting. I think it's the first one I've done in a while that's not virtual, so this is exciting. I just have a really routine piece of business related to the MPO and our agreements with the state of Montana related to management and the planning processes for the MPO. So there are 3 agreements that I'm going to go over. We are sort of making the rounds to get signatures on these agreements. 2 of them are updates, really minor updates related to the reorganization at the city and changes to department structures and membership on our committees. And then the 3rd agreement is related to distribution of our PL, the Federal Transportation Planning Funds. So I'll start with the most general and work to the sort of the most specific agreement. And really what I'm looking for is the chair's signature on these agreements with MDT at the end of the day. So the first agreement is related to the Missoula Metropolitan Transportation Planning process. This is an agreement that I believe you signed maybe a year or 2 ago. We did some updates to get that in order. And really the only thing changing in this is reference to the new reorganization at the city and formation of the Public Works and Mobility Department and moving the MPO functions into that from the now sort of defunct development services. And this agreement really just lays out establishment of the planning process for the MPO, establishing the planning board as sort of the entity that is designated as the MPO, and then how the responsibility is transferred down to TPCC and TTAC for sort of the day-to-day operations, and then the city of Missoula to sort of administer the staff side and the contractual side and the finances. So pretty straightforward on that agreement. The second one is the related to distribution of our PL funds. So this agreement just outlines what those funds are, how they're coming to Missoula, distributed to the MPO, and then all of the requirements for managing those funds. So setting up our work program, requirements for contracting, expending those funds, reimbursements, sort of really administrative things that we manage at the city for use of those funds. This is an agreement that hasn't been updated in quite some time, so it's really just bringing up this agreement to reflect how we actually manage all of that today. So if there are any questions, I can answer those, but it's fairly straightforward. It doesn't change the way we operate. It just gets it into an updated agreement with the state, so we're up to speed and not getting dinged by.
How out of date are we?
I think several years. I don't know if that's in 10 to 15 or 2 to 5, but it's, we've been working on this or, trying to get this in place for 4 or 5 years. And so now we finally have this agreement and it's good to have it updated. It hasn't affected us not having an updated one, but it's good to come back to these regularly. So, yeah. And then the last agreement, again, nothing is really changing in this. It's related to our federal performance measures, and essentially we in Missoula have opted to adopt the statewide performance measures. So we are essentially assisting the state in meeting their statewide federal measures at the MPO level. And so this agreement just outlines some of the ways that we're doing that, and we'll continue to support the state. But it just simplifies that process so we don't have to report on our own those federal performance measures. Even though we will in our local long-range planning and data analysis, we don't have to go through the process to set those separate targets. So just updating this to reflect that reorganization, no major changes. So that's all I've got. It's fairly routine administrative, hopefully.
Okay, 3 documents to authorize me to sign, I guess.
I move to approve that the board approve and sign the updated transportation planning agreements.
I'll second that, and thank you for coming to see us today.
Yeah, thanks for the time.
Yeah, further discussion on the motion. Seeing none. All in favor? All right.
Aye.
Thanks, Aaron.
Great. One quick question, should I send these for signature electronically through admin staff?
I should have copies of them. I can send them electronically.
Perfect, thanks.
Get it handled.
All right, thank you.
That's what you have right there to sign?
Yeah, you could sign them in person, or we have electronic signatures from the city, so whatever's easiest.
Do electronic.
Okay,
We're all about electronic.
all right, thanks.
So, okay, thank you. Moving right along, we have a standard employment agreement with Jamie Dixon, Healthcare Revenue Cycle Administrator and Partnership Health Center. Chris, anything you'd like to add to this?
So no, again, this is just a renewal of an existing employment agreement. Partnership Health Center, of course, is our federally qualified health center, which is not funded by property tax dollars, but is funded by their sliding fee scale, which I have to slow down to say, as well as through insurance and other reimbursements. And this person manages both their federal and other grant cycles to make sure they stay in compliance and continue to receive those funds.
Okay, what do you think?
Yeah, we definitely want to do that.
Okay, that's
Yeah, let's keep this person employed.
Second.
Any further discussion? All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Thank you. Adrian, stage 2 fire restrictions.
All right. Good morning. Adrian Beck from the Missoula Office of Emergency Management. On Tuesday, we asked you to sign an emergency declaration based on our wildfire conditions so that we could access our emergency operations plan. What I have before you today is a proclamation to institute stage 2 fire restrictions within Missoula County. This is in consistency with our surrounding counties that are all part of the Missoula Area Restrictions Plan, as well as the Lolo National Forest, DNRC, U.S. Montana Fish, Wildlife, and Parks. So the plan and the recommendation is to go into stage 2 fire restrictions for all lands within the Missoula area. So for our purposes, that's all private property within Missoula County. At 0001 on July 17th, which essentially is better stated as individuals wake up on Saturday morning with these restrictions in place. Stage 2 fire restrictions specifically prohibit certain activities that are deemed to contribute to human-caused fires. Amid our current situation with our fire conditions and drawdown of resources, we can ill afford any new fires on the landscape right now. Specifically, stage 2 fire restrictions prohibit any kind of campfires for any purpose in any location. So building, maintaining, attending, or using a campfire is now a restricted activity if this were to go into place. Smoking except within an enclosed vehicle, building, or a developed recreation site while stopped in an area at least 3 feet in diameter that is barren or cleared of all flammable material. And then what we have historically referred to as hoot owl regulations, in that activities such as chainsawing, weed whacking, mowing your lawn using an internal combustion engine are prohibited after 1 p.m. until 1 a.m. And there is a requirement to do a foot patrol for 1 hour after those activities have ceased. Reason for those hours is that that's typically when we get into our driest conditions during the day. It's when any recovery of humidity that has occurred overnight is largely dried up, and that's our burn period. So ceasing those activities during that time. And then the fourth thing that is most important for people to recognize is that operating motorized vehicles off designated roads and trails it is also something that that would be prohibited under Stage 2 fire restrictions. There are some exemptions that are listed in our county proclamation. And I won't necessarily go through those, but important to note that even if you are in the category of those exempted activities, it does not absolve that individual from the responsibility for preventing a fire or their obligation and liabilities for causing a fire.
Okay,
So-
thank you. Go ahead.
You said campfires are restricted. Is that the same as prohibited?
Correct.
Thanks. So no campfires.
No campfires in any location.
Thank you.
And is that the same on federal lands?
Correct.
Other questions?
So operating motor vehicles off of designated roads are no longer allowed as well. And essentially that's you know, the internal combustion engines, they just, the heat up can get into dry grass.
So off-roading in the Greeno area?
Correct.
Okay. So on the using a weed whacker or a chainsaw, somebody's doing this in their backyard. That's different than out on the landscape, or how does this all fits together?
It all fits together, correct. So yeah, we ask the public to adhere to these restrictions and to mow their lawns and do their weed whacking in the earlier hours of the day.
Thank you.
Okay, we should make sure that our very own crews who are doing mowing know this along the roadways and byways of Missoula County. So we should not be hearing the sound of lawnmowers in the afternoons right now.
At least in the county.
Yes.
Come Saturday morning.
Okay, so.
Thank you, Adrian.
Thanks.
In
Adrian.
place Saturday morning.
Correct.
Okay,
I move that the board implement Stage 2 fire restrictions in Missoula County.
I'll second that.
any further discussion or public comment? Oh,
I would offer that one of the areas that is not included in this county resolution is within the city limits of Missoula. In conversations with city fire and correspondence that I was CC'd on with the mayor, it does look like the city will also go into Stage 2 restrictions, but just know that the county resolution does not encompass the city in this particular case.
excellent point.
Thank you.
Okay, let's go ahead and vote. All in favor?
Aye. Thanks.
Thanks, Adrian.
Thanks.
All right. We will now be revisiting a topic that we began here a week ago, I guess it was. Was that correct?
Yes, yeah.
And this is related to Operation Shelter. We'll be closing the public hearing and making a decision on how we'll be moving forward. Before we do that, we will first hear an update on public comment received to date and any other staff information that would like to be shared by staff members. We'll then take additional public comment and then move forward accordingly. Chris.
Thank you, Commissioner Strohmeyer. So what I have for you is just a summary first of the written correspondence and voicemails that you have received related to Operation Shelter. So I'll read that into the record first, and then I would ask you to take any additional public comment, and then I will give you some options that are available to you as far as providing direction to staff. So just a quick summary of the public comment. You received a total of 13 comments in support, 24 comments in opposition in general to this. And so those, a quick summary of those comments is the public comment ran not quite, but close to 2-to-1 against addressing the issue of housing and homelessness. Many of the comments in opposition believe that Missoula is more likely to become the next Portland or Seattle, especially if additional services are provided. There was strong belief that Missoula, by providing services, attracts more homeless people, and that many communities, but especially Bozeman, bus people to Missoula because of the services provided. There was strong agreement that transients should be bused out of Missoula and that Missoula should reduce the number of services provided and that existing laws should be enforced, including the arrest of people who are homeless. There also was some desire for additional laws criminalizing homelessness that should be created. I will note that statutorily you do not have that authority, as well as there would be a host of legal issues that I'm sure our attorneys would also mention related to that. So that is not an authority that the commissioners currently have. Most commenters noted that they were longtime Missoula residents and that they did not want their property taxes used for this population. In addition, at least one commenter advised that the government should not be providing these services and that they should instead be provided by charitable organizations, and that needs beyond what charitable organizations could address should be left unmet. The commenters in support of the project tended more towards the types of services that should be offered and possible other locations that should be considered. Among those was a strong desire to make sure that any location that was selected had easy access to bus routes, access to care, food, and access to some form of medical care providers. There were also comments in support that suggested requiring a work component, and that generally ranged from just making sure that folks inside the camp helped to make sure inside any of those campsites remained clean, not necessarily for work outside of that. There was an expressed desire to consider the impacts on the location of these potential sites, with one commenter noting especially that the north side already serves as the location for the current shelter provider in Missoula, or one of the current shelter providers in Missoula. So that is a quick summary or synopsis of the comments that you received either to the BCC email or to the solutions@missoulacounty.us email, as well as a couple of voicemails that you received, and that was current as of about 9:17 this morning.
Thanks, Chris. Before we have questions and discussion among the commissioners, let's go ahead and continue the public hearing. Is there anyone here in the room who would like to comment on this item? Okay, how about callers? Anyone on the line or joining us via Microsoft Teams who would like to provide comment on Operation Shelter? Okay, seeing none, I will close the public hearing. Questions? Or I guess, Chris, maybe if you would like to offer some insight in terms of options moving forward.
You bet. So commissioners, what we're looking for today is for the commission to make a decision to provide direction to staff, whether you would like staff to continue to work with the city to now begin exploring what the costs would be to begin to construct or bring some of these potential sites into fruition so that they would exist. So that might run the gamut of, conversations around what particular types of structure, what permitting might be necessary, what, if any, construction of utilities would be necessary, those pieces. So you would then still have decisions to make each time there were a budgetary piece related to this. So whether that was additional contracts for service providers, or again, if we were looking at, moving utilities into a location or purchase of shelter-like materials, those still would come to you as budgetary decisions at either an administrative or Thursday public meeting, depending on the nature of those requests. So this would just be direction for staff to continue, again, on the course of now beginning to implement what was brought to you by the incident management team and is generally described as Operation Shelter.
Thanks, Chris. Questions or comments?
Some comments.
Yes, please.
Maybe some of the comments that written comments we received referenced Portland and Seattle, saying if we provide services or attempt to deal with this issue in an active way, we are going to become Portland and Seattle. And I would want to turn that on its head and say that if we don't take these types of actions, that is what we will become. People are coming to Missoula not because we have great services, specifically for folks who don't have homes, but because we have all kinds of services. We have hospitals and grocery stores and retail and a downtown and everything else. And as long as we have those things, humans are going to continue to come here. And some of those people are going to be unhoused. Folks who are unhoused are going to find a place to shelter themselves. Typically that means a tent, and they'll put it where they can put it and be out of the way and not be bothered. And what we found when that happens is we get these encampments at places like the Reserve Street or the Broadway Island, and the very active human beings living creates a blight on the landscape that's terrible for the land and really unhealthy for the people involved. If we can create some type of better shelter, we can remediate, we can make sure that environmental problem doesn't exist. And we can also get people into a position where safety and security is part of their lives and they can begin to move themselves forward. So we don't end up like Seattle or Portland. We never have a Missoula where we see tents and tarps blowing in the wind. So I'm excited about us moving forward to attempt to address this problem now before we get to a point where it's too big to handle.
Thanks, Josh. Juanita, anything?
I just had a question with the comments that were not supportive of Operation Shelter. They were the suggestion was not to do anything at all. Is
think
that-
I think-
The worst, yeah, I'm sorry.
Well, I think some of it ran the gamut. There were those, you can correct me if I'm wrong, Chris,
I was
those,
just
those
like
who,
a that first sentence.
yeah, those who were completely lacking in specificity, who were opposed to what it is that we're grappling with here and some of the possible solutions, to those who did offer some specific solutions, which I find abhorrent and absolutely unacceptable. We're not going to criminalize homelessness. The Ninth Circuit Court has ruled as far as what some folks would like by just essentially unconstitutional acts of barring folks from camping anywhere at all, lacking other options. And we're not going to just be buying bus tickets to ship people to Bozeman or some other community based on the assumption that those communities are shipping folks here, which is just completely anecdotal that we've heard for years and has kind of taken on a narrative and life of its own. So there are those specifics. I saw very few specific alternatives to the locations that the incident management team identified, and that is something specifically we have asked folks to do. Is if you don't like the array of options that have been brought before us, what else do you suggest?
So,
Oh,
Yeah, go ahead.
so you mentioned that Ninth Circuit Court of Appeals decision in Boise, and I think that's really important. The situation there was, as we have had here, people camping illegally on public land. And if I understand it right, the decision that the Ninth Circuit made was that you could not arrest people or charge them for trespassing for illegally camping on public land unless there was an alternative. So what we're doing now is creating that alternative. So a piece of this is, yes, we are providing services for homeless people. And the other piece is we're paving the way for actual enforcement. So we can create spaces for people to live where we want them to live, where they can enjoy safety and security and sanitation and not create garbage and blight on the landscape. And at the very same time, then we can enforce trespassing on public land and make sure that no one is camping where they're not supposed to be camping. So this can be the greater community wins, and the people who are facing these horrible obstacles also benefit.
Yeah, I feel like that piece was missed. People don't understand that we don't have the ability to enforce without a place to put people.
Correct.
And that gets lost.
Yeah, and we are making it so we can actually enforce these laws. I do see the mayor joining us here.
Mayor Engen, thank you for joining us. Is there anything that you would like to add to the discussion?
Well, my pleasure, and I appreciate the discussion. I appreciate the opportunity to Zoom in or Teams in with you today. And I appreciated Chris's summary of the discussion. I had a similar summary from my staff. And I think Commissioner Slotnick has described this really succinctly. And the fact is, we can't have it both ways. And we, I think, through this process are striking the right balance. And I think our continued discussions will bear fruit. The way to not be Portland, or you name the community that is struggling mightily to the point that it appears they've given up, is to not give up. And we are taking action. This is experimental. I don't think anyone has thoroughly cracked the case here, but we're taking, I think, reasonable steps. And commissioners and I have had a lot of conversations about this. Both publicly and individually. And I hope that you will direct staff to work with city staff to sort this. I think the ground that we have identified through this project largely exists within the city limits, and I'd like to work with you on sorting out the best options, which options we want to pursue, the order in which we want to pursue them, and all of that. But you know, I think commissioners and I are in lockstep in saying that by doing nothing, we will get a product that is far worse than than what we're seeing on the ground today. And as Commissioner Strohmeyer suggests, the alternatives that some folks are suggesting, they're really easy to spout in a voicemail or an email, but these are real human lives we're talking about, and we as elected officials have a responsibility to those lives as well. So I think we're threading the needle, as it were, and I think we have a great opportunity here. So thank you for being a partner in moving forward with this.
Thanks, Mayor Engen. And I would add that in some of the comment we've received, either via email or otherwise, folks have brought up legitimate concerns as far as how the siting of any one of these service areas, I guess, if you will, to a specific property might impact an adjoining neighborhood or landowner. And we are not tone deaf to that. And certainly as we move forward, we'll want to look at ways in which the operation of one of these facilities, the impacts are mitigated to adjoining properties. So we hear you and are going to be trying mightily to address those concerns. But I do believe that I guess putting the brakes on and coming to a full stop is not an option.
No, we're going to direct staff to address these challenges.
Let's lick that thread and thread that needle.
There you go.
Okay, Commissioner Vero said it, lick the thread and thread
Thread
the
the
needle. So the motion is to direct staff to proceed. If I read us correctly, the motion would be to proceed on efforts to address the immediate needs related to addressing homelessness and camping in the urban wild.
I'll second that. Oh, was that the motion? I'm sorry.
That would be the motion.
You're reading it. There's the motion.
Okay.
There you go.
Then I will second that motion.
Any further discussion on the motion? Seeing none. Did you want to come, Mr. Everingham? Did you want to come on up to the microphone? Oh, okay. It's okay. Dave Everingham gives us the thumbs up. Okay, let's go ahead and vote. All in favor?
Aye.
Okay. Chris, is that adequate direction for now?
Yes, thank you, commissioners.
And also shout out to Adrian and your team with the incident management team. You guys did a heavy lift on this.
Really great work that provided direction and insight and did it quickly too. Thank you so much.
Thanks, Mayor Engen.
Thank
You can
you.
hang around for this next item if you would like. Okay, we got the thumbs up. So next item before us is a proposed resolution to hold a special election to consider a 3% local option tax on marijuana sales. Chris, are you going to offer us any comments here?
I will, commissioners. So what I'll do again is summarize the public comment you've received since you opened the public hearing last week on this resolution to hold a special election. And then if you'd like to gather any comment from members of the public who are currently joining us. And then when you're ready, I have draft ballot language that you can consider thanks to the incredible work of our county attorney's office. They were able to put together 3 potential options for you to consider. And of course, you can modify that ballot language as you choose, but we thought it might be helpful for you to have some examples of what that might look like. So if that's acceptable, I will summarize the written comments that you've received.
Yes, please do.
All right, so you received a total of 20 comments related to the proposals to put marijuana on the tax. Generally, the comments on taxation ran almost 2 to 1 in support of putting the taxation before the voters. The comments in support generally included a desire to tax recreational versus medical marijuana. In addition, several commenters suggested that local alcohol should be similarly taxed. I did let those folks who wrote in with that know that that is not currently an authority enjoyed by the county. Only the state can tax alcohol. The county does not have that authority. Commenters also suggested that several uses of the proceeds from the tax should either be property tax relief, funding for either housing or mental health services. In general, the comments that you received in opposition to the amendment fell along the lines that this was in essence a sales tax, and the folks were opposed to any form of sales tax being enacted anywhere in the state of Montana. One commenter commented specifically, though, that his concern was not related to the taxation, but simply that taxation of this industry where it's just beginning would limit its ability to grow and create jobs and improve the economy in Missoula. So that is a summary of the comments you've received to date.
Thank you. And speaking of public comment, is there anyone in the room who would like to comment on this? Mr. Everingham, come on up to the microphone, please. Make yourself at home, hit the button to turn the light green.
I'm vaccinated. I just wear this anyway.
No, it's stylish. Yeah. There you go.
Well, I think we should grow marijuana. Actually, the county should, and the city, and make the profits instead of a private corporation. And I think if we don't, the tax should be at least 10%.
Well,
There's going to be a lot of dope getting smoked.
yeah,
There
well,
already is.
that may very well be the case. Chris, is it the case that statutorily 3% is the highest we can go?
The 3% is what was passed in the legislation. That is the
Okay.
option.
Well, forget that idea.
Well, not a bad idea, but
Probably can't grow it either, huh?
well, we'll have to give that some additional thought.
Get those bums to grow the dope up there at the city lot.
All right. Well, thanks, Dave.
You're welcome.
Okay. Is there anyone on the line who would like to comment today? Or joining us via Microsoft Teams? Anyone out there? Raise your hand if you'd like to comment. Okay, seeing none, we will close the public comment period on this. Discussion or questions, and I guess one of the decision points would be what it is, if we're going to put something on the ballot, what it is we're actually going to tax. Is it going to be both medical, medicinal, and recreational, or vice versa?
Yeah, and we were, Chris.
Look at that.
So I think the sample ballot language might help the
Okay.
commission to focus on those things. So I will just quickly read through those for folks, but I do also have them shared out for our Teams audience. So the options before you are correct, commissioners, is to tax both, and the language for that might look very similar to shall Missoula County impose a 3% local option marijuana excise tax on the retail value of all marijuana and marijuana products sold at adult use dispensaries and medical marijuana dispensaries within Missoula County, and then a for or against as it would appear on the ballot. Another option might be to tax only non-medical or recreational marijuana, and that might read, shall Missoula County impose a 3% local option marijuana excise tax on the retail value of all marijuana and marijuana products, excluding medical marijuana and medical marijuana products within Missoula County, and a for or against question. There is also the option for you to consider putting both questions before the voters and allowing the voters to decide whether they want to apply it to recreational or marijuana, and that would read as two ballot questions. The first being, shall Missoula County impose a 3% local option marijuana excise tax on the retail value of all marijuana and marijuana products sold at adult use dispensaries within Missoula County? And the second would be, shall Missoula County impose a 3% local option marijuana excise tax on the retail value of all marijuana and marijuana products sold at medical marijuana dispensaries within Missoula County? So that would allow you the opportunity for the voters to decide each of those questions separately. If the commission chose not to make a decision which question to put on the ballot, you would actually place two questions on the ballot then. And again, this is sample language that could be modified. For example, if you do decide that you want to have the revenues target a specific area.
Thanks, Chris. Thoughts?
Yeah, so I was able to have a handful of conversations across our community and with some other electeds recently, and there was a strong desire to see these revenues go to two broad categories, if possible, one housing and the other property tax relief. And the idea was that we are overly property taxed, as we all know, because we have a lack of other tools to generate revenue by which we can use to provide services. So property tax as a relief as a general category. And the other one was housing, which is one of the main issues of our time, also broad enough that it would provide us latitude to do lots of different things. The idea here was not just that these two categories need to be met, but that knowing we would use these funds to meet these needs would also encourage people to vote for this.
And you think that they're broad enough going into the future that it doesn't box us in?
That is a great question.
necessarily?
I personally feel like saying housing and property tax relief are broad enough that we could do lots of different things. And
But that would not be built into the question going before the voters.
we would build that into the ballot language.
That would be one option, is you could build that into the question. These are, again, samples of how we would word that related to for or against, but you could build restrictions into how the funding would be
And that if this was built in, it would direct where the money would go, and it would also encourage people to vote for this because they would want to see property tax relief and more funds available for housing.
I was going to ask, what does council say?
Yeah.
Anna
Yeah.
Conley, do you want to weigh in on this?
Yeah, the statutory language about what it can be used for is pretty broad, but it is somewhat ambiguous. And we do anticipate the DOR will hopefully promulgate some administrative rules that give us some guidance, but they haven't done that yet. And so I would just be hesitant to get too detailed in future use, in particular, given that there may be some uses that are either required or highly encouraged once we have more guidance from DOR that have public education or dealing with youth and making sure that these products are safely used and understood in our community. So just that caution that you might not want to box yourself in with categories that are very specific.
Thanks. I guess that would be my inclination also, and to build into the run up to the election, some additional deliberation on what the categories could be, with the qualifier that at this point in time, the couple things that make a lot of sense would be housing, tax relief, but I've also heard in public comment some desire for a portion of it to go to substance abuse programming.
Yeah, the state is putting, if I understand it right, going to put a bunch of their money towards substance abuse issues. So definitely a portion of my thinking on this is these are great places for us to spend added revenue. Housing is a huge crisis, and we are, as I said before, overly property taxed. And the other piece of this is an election that will be won or lost. And if there's going to be an election, there should be a campaign. We want to incentivize people to vote for this thing or against it. Telling people where the money is going to go will be meaningful.
Anna, what is?
I mean, what's the legal jeopardy we get into here, Anna, if we say we're going to put this towards property tax relief and housing?
Is it just too unknown right now at this point?
What's the worst? What's the bad thing that's going to happen?
Well, I walk around with a cloud over my head, so
It's your job.
yeah, none of these are things that I would think would necessarily happen, but just off the top of my head, DOR could promulgate administrative rules that further limit counties' abilities to utilize these funds, and those limitations could exclude the things that you're thinking about, or the mechanism by which you provide property relief, if it ends up being more difficult to do, or people feel that you haven't adequately taken the steps that you campaigned on, that there could be some backlash, that the reasons for the tax weren't actually what was executed by the body.
So it's cleaner to leave the language simpler and more spare as
Well,
it
I
is.
mean, I think there's a couple different things. I really hear what Josh is saying, and I really don't disagree with him, but I think you could probably get there by campaign messaging as opposed to building those sideboards into this particular ballot. You can encourage and talk about what it is that you think would be a good use of these funds without having to build that into the ballot language. But you certainly could build it into the ballot language. I'm not saying that that's off the table.
Chris.
So Anna, would one option also be potentially to add a whereas that would be the intention of the commission unless DOR rules prohibited, and then it would be in the resolution putting the question onto the ballot, even though it might not be in the ballot language, and that's the piece that might then be circulated and be able to be used because it does have at least the commission's intention behind it and recorded as what the commission's intention is. I
love that option, Chris. That makes a lot of sense to me.
King Solomon hath spoken. Yeah, he split that baby.
I don't know which one is Solomon. I think it's Chris, right?
Yes, that was Chris.
So what do you all think? I could probably live with that. I like more flexibility rather than less. However, if that's the only way to get something over the finish line here, ultimately, then
I would be definitely pushing in that direction because of the needs and the help that will give us for actually winning this.
well, there is certainly plenty of work on the housing front and also to mitigate tax increases that would otherwise be coming down the pike just to maintain our existing levels of
Exactly.
And
service.
addiction services and mental health, I mean, the gambit, so which could all be under property tax relief. I mean, it gets very broad and general, but that's,
Anna, you were looking as though the wheels are turning. Anything else that you'd like to add?
No, I'm good.
Chris, could you create that whereas?
where the Lounsbury, whereas,
Lounsbury whereas?
I certainly think between Anna and I, Anna obviously is far more eloquent than I am when it comes to those, but I'm sure we can get it in there.
Great. So how do we manage? Oh, we still have other things to consider here as to
Well, Chris,
yeah, how should
we're
we
on
do
a
it? Yeah.
tangent. We
I was
haven't.
gonna say, well, so yes, we can certainly add that to the whereas, and then you will just need to decide whether you would like to put the question
One,
before
either
the
or
voters
both.
as only on recreational, on both,
Mhm.
or whether you want it as two questions before the voters so that the voters can decide whether or not recreational and or medical marijuana will
Right,
be
right.
taxed. And
I'm
I'm
intrigued by the putting two questions before the voters, but what are you guys?
So,
Go
so
ahead.
my initial impulse was, well, we shouldn't be taxing medicine. And then when looking into it, found out that even if we did choose to tax us, if the voters chose to tax us, that would bring the tax on medicinal up to 7%, where the total tax would be 7%, where the total tax on recreational would then be 23%. So medicinal marijuana, when taxed, would still be substantially less expensive than recreational marijuana, which has swayed me a little bit to think maybe we should let voters decide this rather than us decide what they get to decide.
Yeah, I am. I find that option very appealing. We hear often from the electorate that they would like options of directly making a choice, and this would allow them that ability without us
And-
intervening and second guessing.
And like I said, for folks who are fans of medicinal, personally, I recognize the medicinal value, and even when taxed, it would still be substantially less expensive than recreational. 7 to 23, what is that? 16% less. But the tax would be 16% less, which is still a sizable reduction.
Anna, thank you for providing that third option.
Yeah, it was a brilliant option.
Well, I want to just actually wordsmith it a little bit potentially, because when I was just reading it, when Chris put it up, I think I might have made it not as clear as I could have. And so I want to get your thoughts on, if you guys want to go this route, maybe a way to clear it up a little bit. Chris or Violet, do you still have that you could pull up?
I can put it back up on the screen. Absolutely.
We should.
I've had too much coffee this morning, so I get into the weeds when I have too much caffeine.
Okay, there we have it.
I will put up the two separate questions, which I think is what.
Yep, that's perfect. So the first ballot question, the question is, shall Missoula County impose a tax on the retail value of all marijuana products sold at adult use dispensaries? But then the for or against talks about non-medical marijuana and marijuana products and doesn't talk about where they're being purchased from. And I think that the for and against are a little bit more straightforward than the, I think that, Chris, that should say non-medical instead of recreational. And then cut the sold at adult use dispensaries within Missoula County, or cut just at adult use dispensaries. And that way it's clear that we're talking about non-medical marijuana and not really where it's being purchased, because I think some of these dispensaries might end up selling both. And then it more clearly tracks the for and against language. How do you guys feel about that change?
Yep.
I think they're all going to be selling both, at least for the first 18 months.
And then do you think that we need to put non-medical before both marijuana and marijuana products, or that it's clear that that one non-medical applies to both?
Yeah, I was wondering about that.
Let's do both. Just put them in
Be
to be
abundantly clear.
abundantly clear. Exactly.
And then the second ballot question would be,
Medical.
What was that, Josh?
In it right now, it says non-medical marijuana and non-marijuana products. So we
Oh.
should be medical.
that would really confuse things. And then the second ballot question, shall Missoula County impose a 3% local option marijuana excise tax on the retail value of all medical marijuana and medical marijuana products sold within Missoula County? I think will be clearer.
Perfect.
Take out medical marijuana dispensaries.
Yep. Within Missoula County.
And then the medical is the predecessor to both of those words in this one. So that I think is plenty clear.
Okay. Other questions on this?
What's your all's opinion on adding into that, on the second ballot question, adding information around the medical marijuana tax, that even with this tax, it's still 16% less than recreational?
Well, is that something we ought to build into the resolution? If
I don't, it's an open question, just because when I learned that, my opinion changed. So there's an educational piece here that may not happen out there in the world for a certain amount of folks. All they're going to learn about this is when they read their ballot.
Yeah, I guess I would be inclined not to put it in the actual ballot, because there's probably a lot of other things that we could build in there too, and maybe it would fall to
Yes.
education or
I mean, it was something like the total tax would be 23% on recreational, total tax would be 16% on, or
Another way
7% on medicinal.
Another simple way you could do that is in the shall Missoula County impose a 3% local option marijuana excise tax on the retail value of all non-medical marijuana and marijuana products sold within Missoula County, in addition to the 20% state tax.
Mm-hmm.
Great.
sure.
I think you're going to have less people voting for it if you do that, but
I'm a little bit, yeah, I'm a little bit nervous if we, I'm with you. I'm nervous that if we add the 20% to the first ballot, it's going to be a disincentive.
I would leave it out in both.
Okay,
I
all right.
like it cleaner.
We'll just leave it out in both and see what happens.
Commissioners, there is a hand up in the virtual Teams audience, and it's
great.
Diane.
Okay.
Okay, Diane, would you like to identify yourself and offer comment?
Hi, this is Diane. I'm in the Franklin Fort neighborhood, and I just wanted to have Chris fix the first ballot question 4 line, because it still says non-marijuana products instead of non-medical marijuana.
Oh,
products.
non-medical. Oh, good eye.
Get it to the 4 line. That's
Thank
all.
you. Thank you.
Thank you very much. More eyes can make
Yeah.
a better work product. Thank you.
Bye.
Goodbye. Are we good?
Well,
Josh?
I'm just wondering if we add it, if it said something like the first ballot question for a total of 23% tax, and then the second ballot question, a total of 7%, so that a person reading this would not think these two were equal, that the medical and the recreational are equal, because the total tax amount is not the same. Is there a way to do that?
I don't know. I just fear that it's
Yeah.
going to be too
Cumbersome, and I don't.
confusing and may backfire.
One Solomon approach would be to put those taxable amounts in the whereases and then make sure that that's part of campaign discussions on this issue.
Let's do that.
Yeah, I think that's a good idea.
Great. Thank you.
Thanks for the Solomon.
I'm just going to channel Chris.
Yeah. Okay, thanks, Anna. So,
Commissioners, really fast, I was just going to read a comment that we have from Mayor Ingen before he left.
What did he say?
He said, Commissioners, thanks for your support in moving forward with recommendations from the Operation Shelter team. With regard to the marijuana tax, the Missoula City Council on Monday voted in support of placing the question on the ballot through resolution. Thanks for your consideration and leadership.
okay.
Okay, great. Thank you.
Thanks for that.
Do we need to read through this one more time, or someone else will do that and make sure this is,
Yeah.
okay?
Okay, so would the motion be to adopt the amended resolution with the two question option?
I will motion to adopt amended resolution with the 2-question option.
I'll second that.
Any further discussion? Seeing none, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Okay, this will proceed forward onto the November ballot.
Thanks, Anna and Chris.
Yeah, thanks so much.
Yeah, thanks for all of that. And let's see, before we wrap up,
Thanks, Dave.
thanks, Dave. Okay, see ya.
Yeah.
Yeah, and Tuesdays. Oh, that's an option too. Any correspondence? Wildfire update, Adrian.
Okay, not a whole lot has changed since Tuesday. We don't have any new starts. We have had some initial attack activity that has largely been caught in the very early stages without a whole lot of fanfare. We are still keeping a close eye on the Granite Complex, which is burning. It's a series of 3 fires burning in the upper portions of Highway 12 corridor. And they have ordered a type 2 incident management team for that. It likely will be a team coming from out of region, out of GAC. So we're just kind of waiting to figure out how long it's going to take them to travel. Likely the geographic area, something. Essentially, they won't be coming from Montana, Idaho, Wyoming, or North Dakota. So yes, it's likely that we'll be receiving an incident management team from California, possibly Arizona. So more to come on that, but out of region teams certainly are capable. Sometimes they different fuel types, things like that. So we'll be engaged with them to make sure that our concerns for private property and utilization of local resources are forefront. The West Lolo Complex fire continues to, it's a smattering of fires primarily burning outside of Missoula County. The Deep Lookout fire, which is burning near Superior, has a couple spot fires that are right there on the county line, kind of verging into the 9 Mile Valley. They've been making really good progress on that. Of all the fires in their complex, that is their #1 priority. So they're putting a lot of resources on it, really trying to put that one to bed. So it's not a long-term fire that we're dealing with for the remainder of the season. And that's pretty much what we have going on. Today is a red flag day. So for critical fire conditions, we're going to have very low relative humidities with a high potential for winds. So any new starts today will be a big concern, and any fires that are currently on the landscape will be a big concern today.
All right. Thanks, Adrian, for that.
Thanks.
Okay, anything else communications wise? Nothing? Tip of the spear, we've got another probably video coming out here at some point. Soon, okay.
Is there any media on the line that wants to ask any questions about any of this stuff?
Is there any
Mark-
media
Martin's
out there?
hand is up.
Martin's got his hand up.
Hey, good afternoon. So
Come down and join us sometime.
I would like to do that. I will soon. So the resolution tied to the ballot, there's no legality, I guess, that if voters pass this 3% tax, that future commissions couldn't spend this tax on, say, ice cream and slides, because there's no legal binding expense tied to this ballot measure, correct?
Anna, would you like to speak to this? Or Chris, I suspect any act that a commission takes can be modified at a future date, but Chris? Or Anna? Anna?
Yeah, So as I understand the statutory language, it allows for any use by the local government who collects the tax. There may be some clarification from DOR or some limiting, but we haven't had any at this time. So I'm not sure if there would be anything beyond the general budgeting process and, having
So right,
funds to a purpose that further obligates you down the road.
right now it's just a pledge.
Intention.
Okay.
It's kind of a legislative intent, if you will. Martin?
Yeah, so it's a legislative intent. So it's more a pledge on your part that it'll be spent on, say, housing and tax reduction, but another city commission or county commission could easily change that.
They could change it. How easily and what the repercussions of doing so might be a different story.
There'd be a political risk they would have to be willing to take.
Sure. Okay, thank you.
Thanks, Martin.
But
Anybody?
there's another hand.
There is, yeah, Geneva Zoltik.
Hi, Geneva from KPAX here. Just to confirm for the stage 2 restrictions, those are going to begin 12:01 a.m. on Saturday. It kind of got.
First thing Saturday morning.
Okay,
Yep.
great. Thank you.
Thank you. Other questions, comments from the media? Okay, anything else from folks in the room before we adjourn? I think we're good. Have a great rest of the day.
Everybody.
Thanks, everyone.
Thanks.